I have loved Margaret for 8 years, watching her lean on my shoulder while crying over men who did not deserve her. When everyone thought I would finally be the one to make her happy, she handed me a wedding invitation with a smile and asked if I could cater her big day. 3 months later, she stood outside my 5-star restaurant, tears streaming down her face, begging me to take her back. I pulled out my phone, showed her the photo of the ring I had just bought, and said with a smile, "I am proposing to my business partner tonight. I hope you can be happy for me." Margaret was the kind of woman who turned heads everywhere she went. Long dark hair, bright eyes that sparkled when she laughed, and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I met her during my second year of culinary school. She was studying business management at the same university. We were both 20 years old, young, and full of dreams that seemed so close we could almost touch them. I still remember the first time I saw her. It was raining heavily, and she was standing under the awning of the campus library, soaked from head to toe. Her umbrella had broken, and she looked frustrated, staring at the storm as if willing it to stop. I had just finished my evening shift at a small diner and was heading back to my dorm. Without thinking twice, I walked over and offered her my jacket. She looked up at me, surprised, and then smiled. That smile changed everything. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft and warm despite the cold rain. "I am Margaret." "Robert," I replied, feeling my heart do something strange in my chest. From that day forward, we became inseparable. She would wait for me after my classes, and I would walk her to hers. We spent hours in the campus cafeteria, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her dreams of running her own business someday, something elegant and successful. I told her about my passion for cooking, how I wanted to open my own restaurant and create food that made people feel at home. Margaret laughed at my stories about kitchen disasters and praised every dish I made for her. She made me feel like my dreams were not just possible but inevitable. I fell in love with her slowly, then all at once, like seasons changing without you noticing until suddenly everything is different. But Margaret never saw me the way I saw her. To her, I was Robert, her best friend, her constant, the person she could rely on no matter what. And I accepted that role because being close to her, even just as a friend, felt better than not having her in my life at all. During our 3rd year, Margaret started dating a guy named Christopher from the business school. He was tall, confident, and came from a wealthy family. The kind of guy who wore expensive watches and drove a car that cost more than my entire tuition. I hated him the moment I met him, not because he was a bad person, but because he had what I wanted most: Margaret's attention. Christopher treated her well at first. He took her to fancy restaurants, bought her gifts, and made her laugh. But as months passed, I started noticing cracks. Margaret would call me late at night, crying because Christopher had canceled their plans again for a business dinner with his father. Or because he made a comment about her career ambitions being cute but not realistic. Every time she cried, I was there. I would sit with her for hours, listening to her talk about how she felt unimportant, how she wondered if he really loved her. And every time, I wanted to tell her that I would never make her feel that way, that I would put her first, always. But I never did. I just held her hand and told her everything would be okay. Their relationship lasted a year and a half before Christopher broke up with her over a text message. A text message. Margaret was devastated. She stopped going to classes, barely ate, and spent days in her apartment crying. I took time off from my part-time job and stayed with her, cooking her favorite meals, forcing her to eat, and reminding her that she deserved so much better. Slowly, she started to heal. And I was there for every step of it. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment she would see me differently. That she would realize I had been there all along, loving her quietly, waiting for her to notice. But she did not. Instead, she met someone new. His name was Eric, a charming guy who worked in marketing. He was smooth-talking, always knew the right thing to say, and Margaret fell for him fast. I watched it happen all over again. The excitement in her eyes when she talked about him, the way she would check her phone constantly hoping for his messages. It was like Christopher all over again, except this time it hurt even more because I had let myself hope. Eric lasted 8 months. He cheated on her with a coworker. When Margaret found out, she called me in the middle of the night, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. I drove to her apartment, held her while she cried, and once again became the shoulder she needed. This pattern repeated itself for years. Margaret would fall for someone. Things would go wrong. And I would be there to pick up the pieces. There was James, who was emotionally unavailable. Then Anthony, who was too focused on his career to make time for her. And finally, Richard, who broke up with her because he said he was not ready for commitment. Each time, I told myself that this was enough. That I needed to move on, to stop waiting for someone who would never see me as more than a friend. But every time she smiled at me, every time she said, "I do not know what I would do without you, Robert," I stayed. Because the truth was, I did not know how to let her go. By the time we graduated, I had opened a small catering business. It was not much, just me and one assistant working out of a rented kitchen space, but it was mine. Margaret had started working at a marketing firm and was doing well. We still saw each other often, and she still called me whenever she needed someone to talk to. I had accepted my role in her life. I was Robert, the dependable best friend. The one who would always be there, no matter what. And I had made peace with that, or at least I thought I had. Then, 2 years ago, Margaret met someone new. His name was Jonathan Hayes, and he was different from all the others. He was older, in his mid-30s, and ran a successful investment firm. He was polished, sophisticated, and incredibly wealthy. The kind of man who could give Margaret everything she had ever wanted. I knew from the moment she introduced me to him that this was different. The way she looked at him. The way she talked about him. It was not like the others. She was serious about Jonathan. And Jonathan, it seemed, was serious about her. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I was losing her. Not just to another boyfriend, but to a future I could never give her. Jonathan could offer her a life of luxury, stability, and status. What could I offer? A struggling catering business and a cramped apartment. I tried to be happy for her. I smiled when she told me about their dates, nodded when she gushed about how thoughtful he was. But inside, I was breaking. Because I knew that this time, she was not coming back to me. Margaret and Jonathan dated for a year and a half. And then, one evening, she called me and asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, hoping maybe she needed advice about something. But when I arrived at the cafe, I could see the excitement in her eyes before she even said a word. "Robert," she said, reaching across the table to grab my hands, "Jonathan proposed. I am getting married." I do not remember what I said in that moment. I think I congratulated her, smiled, maybe even hugged her. But inside, I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Margaret was getting married. To someone else. And I had spent 8 years loving her, only to watch her walk away with a man who had known her for less than 2. She kept talking, her words a blur of wedding plans and honeymoon destinations. I nodded along, pretending to listen, pretending to care. But all I could think about was how foolish I had been to believe that waiting would be enough. That one day, she would wake up and realize I had been there all along. "And Robert," she said, pulling me out of my thoughts, "I have a huge favor to ask." I looked at her, forcing myself to focus. "I want you to cater the wedding," she said, her eyes bright with hope. "Your food is amazing. And I cannot imagine anyone else doing it. Please say yes." For a moment, I just stared at her. She wanted me to cater her wedding. To spend hours preparing food, watching her marry someone else, all while pretending to be happy for her. It felt like a cruel joke. But I could not say no. I never could when it came to Margaret. "Of course," I said, my voice steady even though I felt like I was falling apart. "I would be honored." She squealed with excitement, reaching over to hug me tightly. "Thank you, Robert. You are the best friend anyone could ask for." Best friend. That phrase echoed in my mind long after she left. I sat in that cafe for another hour, staring at my untouched coffee, trying to process what had just happened. 8 years of love, of hope, of waiting. And this is how it ended. Not with a confession, or a rejection, but with me being asked to cater the wedding that would seal my heartbreak forever. The next few weeks were a blur. Margaret was consumed with wedding planning, and I threw myself into my work. I expanded my catering business, hired more staff, and took on bigger events. I needed the distraction. I needed to focus on something, anything, other than the fact that the woman I loved was marrying someone else. But no matter how busy I kept myself, I could not escape it. Margaret called me almost every day with updates. She wanted my opinion on the menu, the decorations, the seating arrangements. She treated me like I was part of the wedding planning team, completely oblivious to the fact that every conversation felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. Then, about a month before the wedding, something changed. Margaret started calling me less. When we did talk, she seemed distracted, stressed. I assumed it was just wedding jitters, the normal anxiety that comes with planning such a big event. But then, one evening, she called me in tears. "Robert, can you come over?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I need to talk to someone." I dropped everything and drove to her apartment. When she opened the door, I could see she had been crying for a while. Her eyes were red and puffy. Her face pale. I stepped inside, and she immediately collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "What happened?" I asked, guiding her to the couch. She pulled away, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "It is Jonathan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "His company is in trouble. He lost a major investor, and now everything is falling apart. He is talking about postponing the wedding, maybe even calling it off." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me was relieved, hopeful even. Maybe this meant I still had a chance. But another part of me, the part that genuinely cared about Margaret's happiness, felt terrible for her. She had been so excited about this wedding, and now it was all unraveling. "I am so sorry, Margaret," I said, taking her hand. "But if he really loves you, he will find a way to make it work. A wedding is just one day. What matters is the life you build together after." She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. Over the next few days, things only got worse. Jonathan became distant, constantly stressed about his business. Margaret tried to be supportive, but I could tell she was struggling. She started calling me more often again, needing someone to vent to, someone to lean on. And just like all the times before, I was there. I listened, I comforted, I reassured her that everything would be okay. Even though part of me hoped it would not be. Even though part of me wanted Jonathan to fail, to walk away, so that maybe, just maybe, I could finally have my chance. But that chance never came. 2 weeks before the wedding, Jonathan pulled himself together. He secured a new investor, stabilized his company, and the wedding was back on. Margaret was relieved, happy even. And I was right back where I started, pretending to be the supportive best friend, while my heart shattered into pieces. The day of the wedding arrived faster than I wanted it to. I spent the morning at the venue, overseeing the catering setup. Everything had to be perfect. Not because it was Margaret's wedding, but because this was my business, my reputation. I refused to let my personal feelings interfere with my work. As the guests started arriving, I stayed in the kitchen, focused on the food. I did not want to see Margaret in her wedding dress. I did not want to watch her walk down the aisle. I just wanted to get through this day and move on with my life. But life had other plans. The kitchen was my sanctuary that day. The heat from the ovens, the rhythm of chopping and stirring, the organized chaos of plating dishes. It all kept me grounded. My team moved around me efficiently. Everyone focused on their tasks. We had catered dozens of weddings before, but this one felt different. Every plate I prepared, every garnish I placed, felt heavier somehow. Daniel, my sous chef and closest friend since culinary school, kept glancing at me with concern. He was one of the few people who knew the whole story, who understood what this day meant to me. Around mid-afternoon, during a brief lull, he pulled me aside. "Robert, you do not have to stay for the ceremony," he said quietly. "I can handle everything here. Just go. Take a walk. Clear your head." I shook my head. "I am fine, Daniel. This is just another job." He looked at me like he did not believe a word I said. "No, it is not, and you know it. You have been in love with her for 8 years. Watching her marry someone else is going to destroy you." "Then let it destroy me," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I made my choice. I agreed to do this. I cannot back out now." Daniel sighed but did not push further. He knew me well enough to understand that once I committed to something, I saw it through, no matter the cost. As the ceremony time approached, I could hear the music starting, the murmur of guests taking their seats. I forced myself to focus on the food, checking every detail, making sure everything was perfect. But my hands were shaking. I gripped the edge of the counter, taking deep breaths, trying to steady myself. Then I heard it. The wedding march. The sound echoed through the venue, and I knew Margaret was walking down the aisle at that very moment. I closed my eyes, picturing her in a white dress, smiling, radiant, walking toward a future that did not include me. Something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, final crack. Like a glass that had been chipped away at for years, finally splitting completely. I realized in that moment that I had been lying to myself. I was not fine. I was not okay. And I would never be okay as long as I kept doing this to myself. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. There were dozens from Margaret over the past weeks, asking about menu details. Thanking me for my help, telling me how excited she was. I scrolled through them. Each one a reminder of how little she understood what she meant to me. How she had taken my love for granted. Used me as her emotional support while giving her heart to everyone else. I typed out a message, then deleted it. Then typed another and deleted that too. What could I possibly say? That I loved her? That I had always loved her? That watching her marry Jonathan was killing me. What would be the point? She had made her choice, and it was not me. Instead, I put my phone away and returned to work. If this was going to be my final act of love for Margaret, then I would do it perfectly. Every dish would be flawless. Every detail would be exactly as she wanted. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to walk away knowing I had given my all, even when it cost me everything. The reception began, and the dishes started going out. I watched from the kitchen window as guests exclaimed over the food, as Margaret and Jonathan laughed and mingled, as everyone celebrated their union. Margaret looked happy. Genuinely happy. And that hurt more than anything else. About an hour into the reception, Margaret came into the kitchen. She was glowing, her wedding dress pristine, her makeup perfect. She walked straight to me and threw her arms around me. "Robert, the food is incredible," she gushed. "Everyone is raving about it. You outdid yourself. Thank you so much for making this day perfect." I hugged her back stiffly, trying not to breathe in the scent of her perfume. Trying not to memorize the feel of her in my arms, one last time. "I am glad you are happy, Margaret." She pulled back, looking at me with genuine affection. "I could not have done this without you. You have always been there for me, through everything. I am so lucky to have you as my best friend." Best friend. There it was again. That phrase that had defined our relationship for 8 years. I forced a smile. "You deserve all the happiness in the world." She squeezed my hand once more, then returned to the reception. I watched her go, feeling completely numb. Daniel appeared beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "But I will be." The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I went through the motions, overseeing the service, making sure everything ran smoothly. But inside, I was already planning my escape. Not just from this wedding, but from Margaret's life entirely. I could not do this anymore. I could not be the person she ran to when things went wrong, only to watch her run back to someone else when things got better. By the time the reception ended and the last guests had left, I was exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally. I felt hollowed out, empty. Daniel and the rest of the team started cleaning up, but I just stood there, staring at the empty ballroom where Margaret had celebrated the happiest day of her life while I quietly fell apart. "Come on," Daniel said, guiding me toward the door. "Let us get out of here. I am buying you a drink. Or 10. We went to a small bar near my apartment. Daniel ordered whiskey for both of us, and we sat in silence for a while. Finally, he spoke. "So what now?" he asked. "Now I move on," I said, downing my drink in one gulp. "I have wasted 8 years waiting for someone who was never going to choose me. I am done." "Easier said than done," Daniel pointed out. "Maybe," I admitted. "But I have to try. I cannot keep living like this, Daniel. It is destroying me." He nodded slowly. "You know what you need. A distraction. Something to throw yourself into. Focus on the business. Expand. Take on bigger clients. Make something of yourself." I laughed bitterly. "So I can prove to Margaret what she missed out on. That seems petty." "No," Daniel said firmly. "So you can prove to yourself that you are worth more than being someone's backup plan. You are talented, Robert. Your food is incredible. You could be running one of the top catering companies in the city if you stopped letting your personal life hold you back." His words hit harder than I expected. He was right. I had been so focused on Margaret, on hoping she would eventually see me differently, that I had neglected my own dreams. My business had potential, but I had been playing it safe, taking small jobs, never pushing for more. "You are right," I said quietly. "It is time I started focusing on myself." Daniel raised his glass. "To new beginnings." I clinked my glass against his. "To new beginnings." That night, I went home and did something I should have done years ago. I deleted Margaret's number from my phone. I unfollowed her on social media. I removed every photo of us from my apartment. It was painful, like tearing off pieces of my own skin, but it was necessary. If I was going to move on, I needed to do it completely. No more checking her posts, no more waiting for her calls, no more hoping for something that was never going to happen. Margaret had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. The weeks following the wedding were the hardest of my life. I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised even Daniel. I started taking on larger events. Corporate functions. High-profile parties. I reached out to contacts I had been too intimidated to approach before. And slowly, things started to change. My catering business began to grow. Word spread about the quality of my food, the professionalism of my service. Within 2 months, I had bookings lined up for the next 6 months. I hired more staff, rented a larger kitchen space, and started investing in better equipment. But despite the professional success, I felt empty. Every morning I woke up and had to remind myself why I was doing this. Not for Margaret, not to prove anything to her, but for me. Because I deserved better than what I had settled for. Then, about 3 months after the wedding, everything changed. I was catering a corporate event for a large investment firm. It was one of my biggest jobs yet, with over 200 guests and a menu that had taken weeks to plan. I was in the kitchen, overseeing the final preparations, when Daniel came rushing in. "Robert, there is someone here who wants to meet you," he said, slightly out of breath. I frowned. "I am in the middle of service. Can it wait?" "Trust me, you want to meet her now," Daniel insisted. Curious, I followed him out to the main hall. Standing near the entrance was a woman I had never seen before. She was probably in her early 30s, dressed in an elegant navy suit, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She smiled when she saw me approaching. "You must be Robert," she said, extending her hand. "I am Melissa Chen. I own this building and several restaurants downtown. I have been watching your work tonight, and I am very impressed." I shook her hand, caught off guard. "Thank you. That means a lot. I have been looking for someone to partner with," she continued. "Someone with real talent, not just technical skill but genuine passion for food. I think you might be exactly what I have been searching for." I blinked, not sure I had heard her correctly. "Partner?" Melissa nodded. "I have the capital and the business connections. You have the culinary expertise. Together, we could create something remarkable. A high-end catering company that serves the elite of the city. What do you say?" I stared at her, my mind racing. This was the kind of opportunity most chefs only dreamed about. The chance to expand beyond my small operation, to work with someone who had the resources to take things to the next level, but it also felt too good to be true. "I would need to think about it," I said carefully. "Of course," Melissa said, pulling out a business card. "Take your time. But not too much time. I have other candidates I am considering, but you are my first choice. Call me when you have decided." She left, and I stood there holding her card, feeling like my entire world had just tilted on its axis. Daniel appeared beside me, grinning. "Did that just happen?" he asked. "I think so," I said slowly. "Robert, do you know who Melissa Chen is?" Daniel asked, his excitement barely contained. "She owns half the upscale restaurants in the city. She turned a failing steakhouse into the most exclusive reservation in town. If she wants to partner with you, you would be insane to say no." He was right. I knew he was right. But part of me hesitated. This felt like such a dramatic change, and I was not sure I was ready for it. I spent the next few days researching Melissa and her businesses. Everything I found was impressive. She had a reputation for being brilliant but demanding, someone who expected excellence and did not tolerate mediocrity. Her restaurants were consistently rated among the best in the city, and she had a talent for identifying potential where others saw only risk. Finally, I called her. We met at one of her restaurants, a sleek, modern space with an open kitchen and minimalist decor. Over coffee, we discussed the details of the partnership. She would provide the funding, the business infrastructure, and the connections. I would handle all culinary aspects, menu development, and staff training. We would split ownership 50-50. "I believe in investing in people, not just businesses," Melissa explained. "I have watched you work, Robert. You have something special. With the right support, you could be one of the top chefs in this city." Her confidence in me was overwhelming. No one had ever believed in me like this before. Not my parents, who thought cooking was an impractical career. Not my friends, who saw it as a hobby. And certainly not Margaret, who had always treated my work as something cute but not serious. "I am in," I said, extending my hand. Melissa smiled and shook it firmly. "Welcome to the team, partner." The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Melissa and I worked together almost every day, planning the new business, scouting locations, hiring staff. She was exactly as advertised, brilliant, demanding, and absolutely focused on success. But she was also surprisingly kind, always making sure I took breaks, asking about my well-being, treating me like an equal partner rather than just an employee. We opened our new catering company, Prestige Events, with a launch party that attracted some of the most influential people in the city. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, we were booked solid, catering for politicians, celebrities, corporate executives. Everything I had dreamed of was suddenly becoming reality. And somewhere along the way, something else started to happen. I began to notice things about Melissa. The way she laughed at my terrible jokes. The way she always remembered how I liked my coffee. The way her eyes lit up when we successfully executed a difficult event. We started spending time together outside of work, grabbing dinner after long days, meeting on weekends to brainstorm ideas. One evening, after a particularly successful event, we were sitting in her office, reviewing the night's feedback. Melissa looked at me, a soft smile on her face. "You know, when I first approached you, I thought I was just investing in a talented chef," she said. "I did not expect to gain a friend." I smiled back. The feeling is mutual. There was a moment of silence, and something shifted between us. It was subtle, but undeniable. For the first time, since Margaret's wedding, I felt something other than emptiness. Not the desperate, all-consuming love I had felt for Margaret, but something gentler. Something that felt like possibility. "Robert," Melissa said quietly. "I hope this is not inappropriate, but I enjoy spending time with you. More than I probably should for just a business partner." My heart skipped. "Melissa, You do not have to say anything now," she interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know. No pressure. If you only see me as a business partner and friend, I completely understand. But if there is any possibility of more, I would like to explore that." I looked at her. Really looked at her. And realized that somewhere along the way, I had started to care about her too. Not because she was a replacement for Margaret, but because she was Melissa. Strong, intelligent, kind, and genuinely interested in me. "I would like that too," I said softly. She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that made something in my chest feel lighter than it had in months. Melissa and I started dating quietly. We both agreed to keep it private at first, wanting to make sure our personal relationship did not interfere with our professional partnership. But it was effortless in a way nothing with Margaret had ever been. There was no drama. No guessing games. No feeling like I was constantly trying to prove my worth. Melissa valued me, not just as a chef, but as a person. She listened when I talked, supported my ideas, and challenged me to be better. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy. The business was thriving, my personal life was fulfilling, and I had finally stopped checking my phone, hoping for messages from Margaret. I had moved on, truly moved on. Then, one afternoon about 6 months after Margaret's wedding, Daniel burst into my office with a strange expression on his face. "You are not going to believe who just called to book an event," he said. "Who?" I asked, not really paying attention as I reviewed a contract. "Margaret." My pen stopped mid-signature. I looked up at Daniel. "What?" "Margaret Hayes," he repeated. "She wants to book us for a party. Anniversary celebration, or something. She specifically asked to speak with you." I sat back in my chair, processing this information. 6 months. 6 months of silence, of rebuilding my life, of finally finding happiness. And now she was back. "Tell her we are fully booked," I said flatly. Daniel hesitated. "Robert, she is offering a lot of money. And it would be great exposure. Her husband's family is very well connected." "I do not care," I said firmly. "I am not interested." But Margaret was persistent. She called repeatedly over the next few days. She sent emails. She even showed up at our office one afternoon. But I refused to see her. Finally, Melissa, who knew the whole story by now, sat down with me. "Robert, I understand this is difficult," she said gently. "But we cannot turn down high-profile clients just because of personal history. It looks unprofessional. And honestly, it makes it seem like you still have unresolved feelings." "I do not," I insisted. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Then prove it. Take the meeting. Be professional. Show her that you have moved on." She was right, and I knew it. Avoiding Margaret made me look weak, like I was still affected by her. If I really had moved on, I should be able to handle a simple business meeting. So I agreed. Margaret came to the office the next day. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, paler, with shadows under her eyes that makeup could not quite hide. But she still smiled when she saw me, that same bright smile I had fallen in love with years ago. "Robert," she said warmly, reaching out to hug me. "It is so good to see you. It has been too long." I stepped back before she could embrace me, keeping my expression neutral. "Hello, Margaret. Please, have a seat. Let us discuss your event." Something flickered in her eyes, hurt maybe, but she sat down. For the next 30 minutes, we went over details. It was their first anniversary party. A celebration for close friends and family. She wanted something elegant but intimate. Classic dishes with a modern twist. I knew you were the only one who could do this justice, she said, her tone almost pleading. Your work has always been incredible, Robert. I have been following your new company's success. You have done so well for yourself. Thank you, I said politely but coldly. We will send you a proposal by the end of the week. Margaret hesitated, then spoke softly. Robert, can we talk? Just for a minute. Not about business. There is nothing to talk about, I said, standing up to signal the meeting was over. Please, she said, and there was genuine desperation in her voice now. I miss you. I miss my best friend. We have not spoken in 6 months, and I just want to know that we are okay. I looked at her for a long moment. We are not okay, Margaret. We will never be okay. You used me for 8 years as your emotional support while you dated everyone else. And when you finally found someone you wanted to marry, you did not even consider how that might affect me. You asked me to cater your wedding, watched me agree, and never once questioned whether that was fair. Her eyes filled with tears. I did not realize. I thought you did not mind. You were always so supportive. Because I loved you, I said, my voice hard. I was in love with you for 8 years, Margaret. Everyone knew it except apparently you. Or maybe you did know, and you just did not care. She stood up, tears streaming down her face now. Robert, I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. If I had known. It would not have changed anything, I interrupted. You still would have married Jonathan. You still would have chosen him over me. Because that is what you do, Margaret. You take and take from people who care about you, and you never give anything back. The words were harsh, harsher than I had ever spoken to her before. But they felt necessary. Like lancing a wound that had been infected for too long. Margaret wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. You are right, she whispered. I was selfish. I took advantage of your kindness. And I am sorry. But please, can we try to fix this? Can we go back to being friends? No, I said simply. I do not want to be your friend, Margaret. I do not want to be the person you call when things go wrong. I am done with that role. She looked broken, shattered. Part of me felt guilty for being so brutal. But a larger part of me felt relieved. After years of swallowing my feelings, of pretending to be okay, I had finally said what I needed to say. Margaret left without another word. I sat back down at my desk, feeling drained but also lighter. Melissa appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. Are you all right? She asked. Actually, yes, I said, and I meant it. I think I finally am. We decided to take Margaret's event. It was good business, and I refused to let personal feelings interfere with professional opportunities. But I assigned Daniel to handle all direct communication with her. I would oversee the menu and preparation, but I would not interact with Margaret more than necessary. The weeks leading up to the anniversary party were busy. Melissa and I were also planning something of our own. After months of dating, I had realized that what I felt for Melissa was real and lasting. She had shown me what a healthy relationship looked like, what it meant to be with someone who valued you and supported you. So I bought a ring. Nothing ostentatious, just an elegant diamond solitaire that reminded me of Melissa herself. Classic, beautiful, timeless. I was planning to propose the night of Margaret's anniversary party, after we finished the event. It felt symbolic, somehow, closing one chapter while opening another. The night of the party arrived. The venue was beautiful. An upscale hotel ballroom decorated in white and gold. Guests started arriving, and I caught glimpses of Margaret and Jonathan greeting people. They looked happy together, playing the role of the perfect couple. I felt nothing watching them. No jealousy, no regret, just a distant sense of indifference. Melissa was with me that night, helping oversee the event. She looked stunning in a black cocktail dress, her hair swept up elegantly. Several times throughout the evening, I caught guests asking who she was, clearly impressed by her poise and presence. About halfway through the party, Margaret came into the kitchen. I was plating desserts when she appeared, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Everything is perfect, Robert, she said quietly. Thank you for doing this. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She hesitated, then continued. I have been thinking a lot about what you said. About how I took advantage of your kindness. You were right. I did. And I am truly sorry. Margaret, we do not need to do this now. I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. I know, she said, but I need you to understand something. Jonathan and I are not doing well. The marriage is not what I thought it would be. He is distant, always working, and I feel more alone now than I ever did when I was single. I felt a flash of anger. And you are telling me this because Because I made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. I should have chosen you, Robert. You were always there, always constant, and I took that for granted. I realize that now. Before I could respond, Melissa walked into the kitchen. She immediately sensed the tension and came to stand beside me, placing a hand on my arm in a gesture that was both supportive and possessive. Margaret's eyes widened as she looked between us. Oh, she said softly. I did not realize you were seeing someone. This is Melissa Chen, my business partner, I said. Then, after a pause, I added, and my girlfriend. The word felt good to say out loud, officially claiming what Melissa and I had built together. Margaret's face went pale. She looked at Melissa, really looked at her, taking in the expensive dress, the confident posture, the way she stood beside me like she belonged there. Then she looked back at me, and I saw the exact moment she understood. She had lost me. Not just as a potential romantic partner, but as the backup plan she had always counted on. I see, Margaret said quietly. Well, I hope you will both be very happy together. She turned and walked out of the kitchen, her shoulders slightly hunched, and I felt nothing but relief. Melissa squeezed my arm gently. You okay? She asked. I smiled at her, a genuine smile. I am perfect. The rest of the party went smoothly. As the evening wound down and guests started leaving, Daniel and the team began breaking down the kitchen while I helped Melissa coordinate the final details. Jonathan Hayes found us near the end, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Exceptional work tonight, he said. Margaret was right to insist on hiring you. If you ever need a business reference, feel free to use my name. He had no idea about my history with his wife, and I preferred to keep it that way. I thanked him politely and watched him return to Margaret, who was standing near the entrance, saying goodbye to guests. She glanced back at me once, a look filled with regret and longing, before turning away. After everyone had left and the venue was cleared, Melissa and I stood outside in the cool night air. The city lights sparkled around us, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. There is something I have been wanting to do, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. Melissa turned to me, curious. What is that? I pulled out the small velvet box and opened it, revealing the ring. Melissa's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Melissa Chen, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You came into my life when I was broken, when I thought I would never be able to move past the pain of loving someone who did not love me back. But you showed me what real partnership looks like. What it means to be with someone who values me, who supports my dreams, who makes me want to be better every single day. I love you. Not because you helped me forget someone else, but because you helped me remember who I was always meant to be. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Melissa's face as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course I will marry you. I slipped the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around me, laughing and crying at the same time. It was perfect. Not dramatic or complicated, just two people who had found each other at exactly the right time. The next few months were a blur of happiness. We planned a small, intimate wedding, nothing like the elaborate affair Margaret had thrown. Just close friends, family, and the people who truly mattered to us. Daniel stood as my best man, and Melissa's younger sister was her maid of honor. Our business continued to thrive. Prestige Events became the most sought-after catering company in the city. We expanded into restaurant consulting, helping other chefs and restaurateurs build their brands. Everything I had once dreamed of was coming true, not because I was trying to prove something to Margaret, but because I had finally started believing in myself. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Margaret's marriage was indeed struggling. Jonathan was rarely home, constantly traveling for business, and Margaret had become increasingly isolated. Several people mentioned that she had asked about me, wondering how I was doing, but I never reached out. That chapter of my life was closed, and I had no desire to reopen it. Then, about 3 months before my wedding to Melissa, something unexpected happened. Margaret showed up at our office again, this time without an appointment. The receptionist called my office, and I debated whether to see her. Melissa, who was with me reviewing menus, simply said, "It is your choice. But maybe it will give you both closure." So I agreed. Margaret was shown to my office, and I was struck again by how different she looked. The vibrant, confident woman I had known seemed diminished, replaced by someone who looked lost and uncertain. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, sitting down. "I know I do not have the right to ask for your time." "What do you want, Margaret?" I asked, not unkindly but firmly. She took a deep breath. "I wanted to tell you that Jonathan and I are getting divorced." I waited, but felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a mild sense of acknowledgement. I am sorry to hear that, I said, because it seemed like the appropriate response. Are you? She asked, searching my face, or are you secretly pleased that I am getting what I deserve? Neither. I said honestly. I am indifferent, Margaret. What happens in your marriage is no longer my concern. She flinched as if I had slapped her. Robert, I know I hurt you. I know I was selfish and thoughtless, but we had 8 years of friendship. Does that not count for anything? It used to, I said. But you made it very clear at your wedding that I was disposable. That I only mattered when it was convenient for you. I am not interested in going back to that dynamic. I made a terrible mistake, she said, tears beginning to fall. I should have seen what was right in front of me all along. You were everything I ever needed, and I was too blind to see it. But I see it now, Robert. I see it so clearly. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. A year ago, hearing these words would have meant everything to me. I would have forgiven her instantly, taken her back without hesitation. But now, they felt empty. Too little, too late. Margaret, I am getting married, I said gently. In 3 months. To Melissa. Her face crumpled. Please do not. Please, Robert. I know I do not deserve another chance, but I am asking for one anyway. I love you. I think I always have. I just did not realize it until it was too late. You do not love me, I said quietly. You love the idea of me. You love having someone who put you first. Who was always there to catch you when you fell. But that is not love, Margaret. That is convenience. That is not fair. She protested. Maybe not. I acknowledged. But it is true. If you really loved me, you would be happy that I found someone who treats me the way I deserve to be treated. Instead, you are here asking me to give up my happiness for yours. Again. The truth of my words hung in the air between us. Margaret sat there, tears streaming down her face, and I felt a wave of pity for her. Not because I wanted to fix things, but because I genuinely hoped she would figure out her life and find her own happiness. I hope you find what you are looking for, Margaret, I said, standing up. I really do, but it is not going to be with me. Not anymore. She left without another word, and I watched her go, feeling a sense of finality that was almost peaceful. That was the last time I saw her before my wedding. The day Melissa and I got married was perfect. Clear blue skies, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about us. Exchanging vows that we had written ourselves. When I looked at Melissa standing across from me in her simple, elegant wedding dress, I felt nothing but gratitude. Grateful that I had stopped waiting for someone who was never going to choose me. Grateful that I had taken a chance on building something new with someone who valued me. During the reception, Daniel pulled me aside with a strange expression on his face. You are not going to believe this, he said. Margaret is outside. I looked at him in disbelief. What? She is standing outside the venue, Daniel said, just standing there in the parking lot. One of the staff spotted her. I excused myself and went outside. Sure enough, Margaret was there, standing beside her car, still wearing casual clothes, looking completely out of place. When she saw me, she straightened up. I know I should not be here, she said immediately. I know this is inappropriate and probably crazy, but I had to try one more time. Please, Robert. Please do not do this. I looked at her, this woman I had loved for so long, and felt nothing but a distant sense of sadness. Sadness for the time I had wasted, for the person I had been who thought loving someone meant accepting whatever scraps of affection they threw my way. Margaret, I think you need to hear this, I said calmly. What we had, whatever it was not healthy. I spent 8 years loving you while you used me as your emotional backup plan. That was not fair to me, and honestly, it was not fair to you either. You deserved to have a real friend, not someone who was secretly hoping you would eventually fall in love with them. But I do love you now, she insisted desperately. No, you do not, I said firmly. You love the attention I gave you. You love feeling like you were someone's first priority. But you do not love me, Margaret. If you did, you would want me to be happy. Even if that happiness does not include you. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, seeming to realize I was right. I am married now, I continued. To an incredible woman who values me, who respects me, who treats me like an equal partner. I have everything I ever wanted, Margaret. And none of it includes you. I need you to accept that and move on with your life. I cannot, she whispered. Then that is something you need to work on, I said gently. But it is not my problem anymore. Goodbye, Margaret. I genuinely hope you find happiness. Just not with me. I turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing in the parking lot. When I returned to the reception, Melissa was waiting by the door, a questioning look on her face. "Everything okay?" she asked. I smiled and took her hand. "Everything is perfect." We danced, we laughed, we celebrated with the people we loved. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I was not thinking about Margaret. I was not wondering what she was doing or feeling guilty about moving on. I was just present, in that moment, with the woman I loved and the life we were building together. 6 months later, Prestige Events was featured in a major culinary magazine as one of the top catering companies in the country. The article highlighted our innovative menus, our commitment to quality, and the partnership between me and Melissa. There was a photo of us in the kitchen, working side by side, both smiling. We looked happy because we were. I never heard from Margaret again after the wedding. Through mutual friends, I learned that she eventually moved to another city, started over, and from what I heard, she was doing better. I was glad. Not because I still cared in the way I once did, but because I had finally reached a place where I could wish her well without it costing me anything. My life with Melissa was everything I had never known I wanted. Simple, steady, built on mutual respect and genuine love. We opened our first restaurant together the following year. On opening night, standing in the kitchen we had designed together, watching customers enjoy the food we had created, I realized something important. For 8 years, I had thought Margaret was my dream, but she was just a lesson. A painful, necessary lesson about knowing my worth and refusing to settle for less than I deserved. My real dream was this, a life I had built with someone who chose me every single day, not as a backup plan, but as a first choice. And that, I realized, was worth every moment of heartbreak it took to get here.